1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Lay It on the Table, the Southern Board Game Podcast, with the accent on Southern. As usual, I am Joe Mahaffey, and I'm sitting here in my home in November, and I am here joined by my normal partner in crime.
That's me, James Englehart, also at my home on a blisteringly hot Sunday in November.
Well, that's how it works in the
crazy.
South. We are the Southern Board Game Podcast. That's why it's warm.
Where it is pushing 80 again somehow.
So
but we're not alone, are we?
No. In fact, as you know, usually we get together and we talk about what is on our table. But today we are joined by John Bailey, the publisher and founder behind HumbleBard Games, a studio creating imaginative, thematic adventure games with a passion for storytelling and player experience. And I had the opportunity to speak with John and meet him at Mythicon earlier this month, and actually picked up a copy of his game, Spirits of Christmas, right while I was there at the show. And so we thought it would be good. It's been a while since we've had both a publisher and a designer on the podcast, so we thought it would be a good time to get together. So, John, welcome to Lay It on the Table.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
So I'm curious, just to kind of get the ball rolling here. So the name of your publishing brand, HumbleBard Games, what inspired you to start it, and where does the name come from?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you where the name came from first. I was sitting there racking my brain trying to create one. That's always the trick. I guess it just kind of happened. I put together, I'm like, what do I want to be known as? Who am I? So, well, I'm a musician, have been most of my life. I play guitar. I went to college for music. I taught music for over 20 years. And then I made a migration, but that's a different story. So as a guitarist and a vocalist, and I played, I enjoyed gaming growing up. I did role-playing games and fantasy. I always enjoyed fantasy. Of course, there's the bard tropes and all that.
Sure.
And so I thought, I guess I'm just a bard. Maybe that's what I need to be. And then I somehow came up with HumbleBard Games, and I ran it by my game group buddies, and they said, that's it. I said, okay. So that's kind of what that, and then why did I do it? Well, honestly, I always made games growing up. When I was like 10, I remember sitting at my desk in my room with a piece of paper. And when I was growing up, I did have some video games, but I don't know, we just weren't able to get the latest games and stuff like that all the time. And I didn't, I played what I had, but then I'm like, I just want to play games, but I don't have access to all the games I want to play. And I would pull out a piece of paper and a pencil, and I would create like a video game on paper.
Oh, yeah.
And I would do these strange things when I was in the car. Okay. For example, if driving down the road, and I'm talking back when I was first introduced to Donkey Kong, for example, or games like that when I was a kid. And we didn't have an Atari or anything at the time, but I just wanted to play these games. I would drive down the road, I'd look out the window, and somehow, and by the way my odd brain works, I would imagine jumping over telephone poles, jumping over cars as they go by. Okay, I was doing this in my head. And I'm like, and everything was just very detailed in that way, and imagining these things. And then later on, as I got a little older, that's when I sat down, got out the piece of paper, and I started drawing these levels out. And then I would just put things on the levels, little ladders to go down or up to the next level. And I would just create these obstacles, create bad guys on the paper. And then I would just move through and figure out, now, how am I going to defeat this bad guy? And then I would somehow figure some creative way. Of course, I had no rules. I had no mechanisms. I had no dice. I just do what I want. So I'm like, of course I'm not going to lose on purpose, but I'm like, I'm going to defeat this bad guy. Oh, look, let me put a chandelier above him, and let me just pretend to cut it and it falls on, things like this. And just having fun in my mind. I had no screen. I had no phone. I had none of these things. So, and just playing. And so that, I think, and I didn't have any board games maybe except for one or two. Okay. So it wasn't like I was all into board gaming or anything. That was, so I just did all that. Once I got a little older and I remember getting my first Fortress America board game, and then my brother-in-law said, "I noticed you had Fortress America. Where'd you get that?" And I was like 13. I'm like, "Well, I saw it at the store and it looked cool, and I used my birthday money to get it." And he's like, "Well, I have a game called Axis and Allies. I should do." So he actually helped me get started with just playing board games. I didn't have anybody to play with. So, he played with me. We played both of those games, got hooked. Of course, years later, I kind of circled back, life happens. And then I circled back around to board gaming and things like that once the great renaissance of board gaming began. It was actually when my son, my oldest, my son was younger, and he was wanting to play games with me. He wanted to play Axis and Allies. He'd laid the thing out by himself and would just play this game by himself. And now he's like a World War II buff. That's just his thing. Okay. So, and he's like graduating college. So but he just loves this stuff. So, but at that time I was like, well, we need some games to play. That's something new. And so that's when I started looking into it. This is like 2011. And I started looking back into what games are out. And I thought, oh, games are there's a lot of games out there.
Yep.
And then I ran into some, other big name folks and people online and things. And I just said, well, and I started educating myself on it. I got heavily into it. And then within a couple of years, I said, I just want to play around with this. And then I ended up designing a game one evening, just sat down, wrote all the rules out. It's just because a colleague of mine said, I have an idea for a game. We should make a game. And I said, oh, that sounds great. So I went home that night and I made it. And I brought it back to him the next day. He's like, oh. So we sat down. That game's not been published. It actually exists, but I haven't talked about that one. But anyway, it's still, it does exist.
We've had publishers and designers accidentally show off new games without telling us
Sure.
So.
Well, that one's not going to get shown off, but I really, really am looking forward to being able to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how I got started. And then I created several other designs. And then bringing the story to a close here, that's when I designed my big pirate game, Song of the Seas, and I was playing that with my friends, and they said, "This is great. We got to have this." But then I said, "But I'm a nobody, and I can't just take this giant game and put it on Kickstarter. No, it's not gonna fly, guys. That's not how it works. I have to have good art. I have to have bazillions of hours of playtesting by bazillions of people, and this is not the one to start with." And so. But then I designed a couple of others. My friends told me, if you don't publish it, we're going to steal them and publish them ourselves and take all the money. And I said, fine, I'll do it. Okay. That's when I decided to, but I needed something to start with. So I started with a print and play. Now this is around 2020 and we all know what was going on now.
Oh, yeah.
I said, well, why don't I start with some print and plays? That seems to be what people are doing. And it's an easy way to get in. I mean, if you can't fund it $50, then what are you doing wrong, right? With a print and play. So I made a print and play, and it went very, very well with Fortress of Terror. Now I didn't know what I was doing still, so I made some mistakes, but overall, I think it was great. And then from there, I moved on. I told my daughter, "Hey, let's do Spirits of Christmas," and that's how that came up. But that's probably another question, so I won't go any further than that.
Well, you hit on two things. I do want to get into Spirits of Christmas, and I do want to get into the collaboration with your daughter. And I think those are going to just sort of organically unpack as we get into this discussion. And I know that James is going to have some questions as well, but I do want to pivot back to the Spirits of Christmas because A Christmas Carol. We're coming into that season where those movies, whichever is your favorite, is going to be out there. I still lean very heavily on the George C. Scott version.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. And A Christmas Carol is one of my wife's favorite stories. We both were in college together. She was an English major, and she did I want to say it was a whole interim at Wofford on Dickens.
Okay.
Maybe. I think they read Dickens
possible,
in a month. I don't know. But anyway, I'm just curious, what drew you to adapt A Christmas Carol into a game?
Okay, that's a good question. And to be honest with you, I didn't grow up as a Dickens fan, although I do like Dickens. That's not like that was my lifeblood, and I just had to make a game with Dickens. And it wasn't
Sure.
about that. It was, for me, it was more of childhood nostalgia that stuck with me through the adulthood, and that was just the story itself. I mean, I grew up, George C. Scott's a good version. I grew up from when I can earliest remember, because the movie came out in 1970. That was before I was born. But my parents, of course, we would watch on TV. My parents went to the movie theater to see the original Scrooge, the musical. Okay. And that was done. Yeah. And with Albert Finney.
Yep.
And that one was done. They went to the theater to see that. And that's why when it came on TV, when I was like 4 or 5, that's the earliest I can remember them saying, "Oh, it's on TV. Let's watch it." And of course, I'm watching it. I actually strangely remember the story loosely. It's such a simple story, really. It's easy to understand until you get to the end. You see scary things when you're 4 or 5, but that story stuck with me. And then the songs from it were just so catchy. And my family just kind of almost made it like not an inside joke, but those things, it's not a joke. It's just one of those things we share as a family. You'll make quotes from the movie and everybody knows exactly what you're talking about.
Sure.
It's just the same kind of thing. So, at Christmas time, you just say, "Thank you very much." And we all know what we're talking about. Okay. Because the song from the musical. So I think, and then of course, you're going to share that with your own children, that nostalgia. And my kids loved it. And so of course we're going to watch it every year and those kinds of things. And my daughter, Emmy, she's my second. She really loved the movie too. And of course, and it was I think it was in October or November or something. We started to talk about Christmas is coming, or we made some offhanded thing about Scrooge and things. And we're like, I said, we need a good game about that story. I mean, there's a lot of loosely themed things, but for me, I'm a theme guy. When I design a game, I say, okay, I want to play like going back to my childhood days. I want to play where I'm trying to escape from this building with all these bad guys. That's what I want to play. Now, how do I do it? I don't know, but I'm going to play with it because I want to play with a theme. I don't want to play with mechanisms. I want to play with the theme. Now, nothing wrong with doing that because honestly, there's some really great abstract games that I just love that have neat mechanisms. Who cares about the theme? But for me, I have to start with a theme and then figure out how to make a game out of it. So that was a natural thing for me. So I started with that and I thought, there's a lot of Christmas games, but the ones that I've played tend to be either party games or which are fine, or just not the kind of thing I design, or things like that. And I thought, what about a game that actually has some meat on it? Because making a holiday game is actually kind of risky. I think
Sure.
you don't sell as many copies for obvious reasons when you're targeting, it's a targeted audience. So, but I thought, I want to play with that story. And I think because of my passion and my love for the story, I think I can make a decent game out of it. I don't know how many people will buy it, but I'll make a game out of it. And she said, well, if you're going to make the game, I want to do the art because I love the story. And she was going into a high school for the arts at that time. She had just been accepted and she was going in. And so she did some sketches and things and we got started with it that way. So that's kind of how the whole thing got started. And of course I sat down and I usually design quickly. I sit down and I just do a whole thing. I think I had it designed in a weekend. And then of course it's tweaking after that.
Sure. And so I know James has been involved in some publishing in his life too. James, I'm sure you probably have some questions around the process.
Well, so I was going to pivot slightly differently, but it looked like a lot of your early games at HumbleBard were those solo adventure games, the roll and write.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Roll with it is what I did.
Yeah, that's it. So how did that start? Why were you thinking let's do solo games? But I'm hearing you talking about I'm in the car. I'm turning the car trip into its own side scroller, and making your own levels and other stuff. And so I could see that. But was that a conscious decision, or you just thought, you know what, I can start these as print and plays, and I can sell them. And so I'm interested in how that all developed.
Sure. So yeah, because that was really the start of it, wasn't it? Well, it actually started, I have to give credit where credit is due always. And that's to the fine folks on who started the solitaire game contests on Board Game Geek. They got that started, and I think I'd have to go back and look now. What number was it? 4? The 4th one or 5th one, somewhere around there. Now I don't know what number they're on. They're past 10 by now. I don't know, but they do it every year. But I was in the solitaire roll and write contest. And so I entered I created an idea. It was going to be called Brahm's Garden. I don't know why Brahm. It's just the name that came to my mind. Weird fantasy names that just, you roll the dice and you get what you want. But Brahm's Garden, and you're in this garden and you're trying to escape the garden. And that was the whole idea. And that's actually the first chapter of 4 chapters of the Fortress of Terror module. But it started out as a single little game on a piece of paper where you just do the thing, you escape the garden, and that's it. And it was actually kind of fun. And I tweaked it until I made it challenging, because I was just doing it for this little contest. I had to get it done in a certain amount of time, so it had to be simple. And I got some good feedback on it, because that's the whole point of that contest. People playing it, giving each other feedback. And then once it was over, and I made a little how to play video, and I actually got a little award for that, but I don't think it's because I did a great job. I don't know. Maybe not many people did it, and that's I don't know. That was the award I got for it. But hey, I'll take it. It was great, and everybody was so kind. The people who are playtesting are kind. The feedbacks are great. I met a few people on there that I interacted with later, so it's just really great. And the people who put it on too were very, very supportive. So. Anyway, and that turned into, well, let me just do a Kickstarter for this with a print and play game. And then, and as I was playing it, I thought, this is just not enough. It's just one little thing. It needs more for me to turn this into a viable product. So I'm like, well, let's add a story to it now. What are you trying to do? You're in Brahm's Garden. And then it became, okay, well, actually there's a tower and you have to go into a tower. And maybe this was influenced a little bit by my love of the Citadel of Chaos, Steve Jackson from the.
I was going to say the fighting fantasy books, yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh my! I found that game in the library when I was a kid. Took it to school. That's what I was doing instead of my work. But that's another story. Yep. Anyway, but yeah. It's obviously not much influence, except just the whole concept of that, I think, was influencing. But there's a baddie in the top of the tower, and I got to go get him. But other than that, so you go through the garden, and then you have to escape it, and then you fall through, and you go into the crypt, and you have to escape the crypt. Then you go into the tower itself, and you go through the tower. In the end, you get to Brahm's chamber, and you fight Brahm, and you win. And the neat thing was, I'm like, well, I can use the same core mechanisms that I created for the game. It's a real skeleton mechanic. You have a handful of dice, and you have 4 dice that you use for movement in its most simplistic form. 4 dice for movement. You have 1 4-sided die, which is the luck die, and that allows you to mitigate your dice. And then there are 2 other dice. There's a blue die and a red die, and each chapter, the function of those dice changes. So, one usually the red is some kind of attack or something, and maybe the blue die might be some kind of magic or some kind of jump or some kind of something. And then there's a 12-sided die that you use for the doom die, which changes at every round. It affects some bad thing that's going to happen to you, and it's usually rotating and advancing. Some chapters or modules make you re-roll the die, but usually it's an advancing thing. So that's the basic mechanic, and then you just simply take that, you bring it over to the next module, put a new theme on it, decide how you want to tweak it so it doesn't get boring. It's just yet again the same thing with a new skin on it. No, it needs to have. It's so flexible that I can just do what I want. So that's kind of where I went with it. And I created an entire fantasy set. But it started out with just the Fortress of Terror. Those 4 chapters, I did the Kickstarter for it, and it got such a good response for it. And then I thought, well, what if I float these ideas of some other modules, because now I can easily adapt this. And I floated out, and the backers were just ecstatic. They seemed to be really like, yeah, I want to play that. So I'm like, well, how about another module called this? Now, understand, folks, I haven't designed these yet. Just know that, but I will. I mean, it doesn't take me years to design one of these modules. It takes, maybe a month or 2 at most. But yeah, so I ended up My problem was I let that spiral out of control. That I got so much feedback from that. And as a new person, I'm like, well, I can design one of these new ones, regularly. Well, I unlocked so many stretch goals. I had so many modules I had to make, and I actually got a little burned out from it. But yeah, but I finished them all. I finished them all. It took me a little longer than I expected, but because I ended up going into sci-fi as well as some modern modules. But the fantasy series was always the original. That was always kind of the thing. It was planned and it was finished early on, within a few months, and gotten out to the backers. The thing that drew people in was they were getting all these modules for no extra cost. So, and I ended up, because it took me longer to fulfill it, I ended up giving them the entire modern set, and then later all of my sci-fi sets at no extra charge as well. That wasn't the original plan, but I just did it because I'm like, I'm sorry, folks, it's taking me longer because I have so many of these modules. So here, just take them all.
Well, it's interesting. We've had a number of conversations.
That's kind of what I did.
We've had a number of conversations on this podcast around, the Kickstarter process. Mostly as
I think I lost you sound wise.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? James, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good with me.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, we usually, I've talked a lot about the Kickstarter process, mostly as a user.
Oh, there it is.
And waiting. Okay.
I'm sorry. I lost your sound.
No, it's all
After
good.
I finished talking, I saw your mouth moving. I didn't hear anything.
It's all good. That's a blessing to a lot of people that you're very fortunate to have experienced that most people don't get. No, I was just saying that we've talked a lot about Kickstarter on this particular podcast. And sort of, what are the trials and tribulations as a backer, and when you run into a situation where, the process gets elongated and you're like, am I ever going to see this product? And I'm sure that we'll get into that. But I'm curious, did Spirits of Christmas go through the Kickstarter process?
It did. I did my first one with it. That was after the so my first iteration of Spirits of Christmas, this was with we used a watercolor style art that Emmy did, and
Emmy being your daughter.
Emmy was my daughter. Yes,
still is. I hope. Yes,
still is. Still is. Nothing's changed.
I met her at the show. Yes, very nice.
Yeah. But she did that, and then we ran the Kickstarter with that. But the whole time I just wasn't sure that style was working for the project. But we had to follow through with the Kickstarter, and we had to, we've already planned it. We're doing that. And I just started second guessing. I'm like, I should have probably, guided her into digital art instead. I think it would have, because she could do it. I mean, she did what I told her. And so I thought, well, maybe we should do digital art, but it was too late to deal with that. So we said, let's run with it and see what happens at Kickstarter, see what kind of feedback we get from the backers and things like that. And no one really said anything about that at all, until after about 4 days. Now, you can market anything, right? The best marketers can market anything. And that's amazing. I'm not the best marketer. As a matter of fact, I wasn't a marketer. I was just a dude. All right. I was a teacher. I'm sitting here trying to market my game. I did not do much marketing. I mean, first timers, this is common. We just don't know how to, unless you come from a marketing background,
sure,
or you watch these great guys out there who are marketers that tell you how to do it. And, and it's very expensive. So it's kind of hard to get started. That's what Kickstarter's for, but it takes money to make money, right? So it's kind of tough. I didn't put much into the marketing. So I think by the end of 4 days, I think I had about 60 some backers, and, that was great. They're all great people, very supportive, very nice. But at the end of day 4, I did not have the traction. Plus, I set my my goal, my funding goal, too high. I was trying too hard to not set it too low, and ended up setting it too high. And what's too high? What's too low? Well, too high was for me and for this project. For somebody, nobody knew about me, and I didn't do much marketing. And so I was not going to make it. So I said on day 4, this is not going to carry through to funding. So I said, you know what? I've learned some things. Let's pause. This is my first physical Kickstarter. So let's pause this one and let's try again later. And then we talked about it. I talked to my backers. They agreed that digital art probably suits it better, especially for the modern gaming audience, just different things like that. And I told Emmy, can you do that? She was extremely gracious about it. She said, oh, yeah. And so she said, here, this is what, and by this time, she was graduating. And this was a high school for the arts, not college.
Right.
So she was graduating, and she sent me some of her samples. And she started with, I think it was Isabel, the art piece for Isabel, which I probably should have the game right next to me. Maybe I'll grab it. And I'll say, yeah, there it is. But she showed me the artwork for Isabel, and she said, I can do it like this. I said, that's it. It encapsulates. It has even that watercolor vibe without being a watercolor. It has the classic Victorian. It just had the look it needs to have for A Christmas Carol. Nothing wrong with the modern versions. You know, everybody likes some of those others that are more modern and fun and Muppets and those kinds of things. But they're kind of, I don't want to say goofy, but you know what I mean? They're not serious. Whereas this one needed to have that vibe, because I'm not pulling off of anybody else's IP here. I have to take it straight from the book. And so that's what I did. And she did a great job. She said, I'll do them. She redid most of them and just sent them to me little by little. A few of them I told her keep because they turned out so nice. The countryside, there's one with the countryside and the snow and all that. Countryside Nostalgia, I believe it's called. That one I said, don't redo that. That's pure watercolor. It looks fantastic. Just keep that. There are a few of them like that, but most of them shoot. Okay, there's Isabel.
There we go.
Yep. There she is. And that was the one she said, I can do it like this. So that's it. And so we have some of those, but most of them were redone. She redid the cover art and the box and all that. And I was just blown away with what she did with the box cover. And so yeah. And then we ran the Kickstarter again. I did a little bit better on the marketing, not as good as I should have, but I did. And we made it. And my backers were just amazing. Look, I've backed up about 100 Kickstarters, and I know that's nothing compared to some people, but I have read the comments, folks. I've been in there. I see what goes on. Most people, I don't know. I guess I can say the silent majority, maybe, and some of them aren't so silent and positive. I mean, positive. Are positive, the silent majority, and the ones who aren't, and they speak up and they just are happy about the project. So many of the people who are supportive, they back it and like, this looks great. I can't wait to get it. And they walk away and they don't look at it again, you know? So they're not in there, but there's a lot of very unkind things that go on. And I was honestly kind of concerned about that, you know? I guess who wouldn't be, I guess.
Sure.
But honestly,
well, I would imagine
people have been amazing.
I would imagine too that when you have your daughter as your artist, and she's coming out of high school and she's going into college, so that puts her into that 18 to 21 range, which, you know, where our egos are already fragile enough at that stage, right? I'm sure that there had to have been some measure of must protect the daughter as I'm going through this public display of, you know, your idea, but her manifestation of the art for it. So
100%. That's totally it. And I mean, and she was a trooper. I told her, you can back out anytime you want. Really, you can. There is no problem with it. This has to be because you want to do it. I'm not the dad trying to make you be the thing that I always wanted. None of that kind of stuff. This is just, if you want to do it. She's the one that originally said she wanted to do it. And the whole way through, I'm like, if you want to quit, it's okay. I can do something different. But you know, she did all the way through. So yeah. But I was going to say, with the Kickstarter, I mean, my backers were phenomenal. They really were kind, just like supportive, kind, excited about the game, chiming in with which is your favorite movie and all this kind of stuff. Just really,
it's Christmas,
really nice
right?
people.
You would hope that the spirit of Christmas would like pull through. It's not like, you know, like, this is the battle of the corporate bastards, right? Then you'd expect like something going on, but it's Christmas, right? So
exactly. No, this really, that's it. That's really it. I think I was lucky in that I picked a theme that would lend itself towards nice people.
Well, and I got to
Maybe.
say the product,
I don't know.
the product itself is really, really great because, just from I buy a lot of games. I'm sure that surprises nobody. And I get a lot of games on Kickstarter, and I've seen Jamie Stegmeyer. He's been a guest of this show before. Jamie's got a video on advice for people making games, like how to do cards and how to package them. And I noticed that whether you saw that video or not, you followed some of the best practices.
I followed Jamie for a very, very long time.
Okay, so the way that you have the cards in there to open them up so it's easy to get into. I love that there's an insert in here that basically accommodates the game. I don't have to go 3D print something. I do that a lot for games, but I'm glad I don't have to do that.
I like
for
it
yours.
myself. I mean, I can't please, you're not going to please everybody. There are people who will say, like, why are we going to do an insert? That's just, how much more do we have to pay now? No, this is not what happened in my Kickstarter project. Let me just be clear. My people were awesome. Nobody said this, but I have seen it said online, other places that, I don't want an insert because that's just going to raise the price, or then my sleeved cards won't fit. And then it's this and this and this. So I said, well, personally, I make the product I want, right? I'll just please myself in that way, and then other people who are like me will buy my game, and that's it, right? So I like good insert, and it honestly isn't that much more really, and it just makes all the difference. It's not heavy, so it just gives you a way to store it, and it is legit about the sleeved cards though. I hate that too. I want to sleeve my cards, and it barely doesn't fit, and then so I made sure with the manufacturer, I'm using this kind of sleeve. Please make sure it'll fit with sleeve cards. And they said, no problem. They did it. They tested it. Works. I got it. I tested it. It was great. So made sure all the components fit, and they fit nicely, flush, but it's not a Tetris puzzle to make sure you get them in there just right. But there's multiple ways to get them in quickly if you're in a hurry, but they fit. Awesome. And it's great. So they did a great job.
James, I don't want to dominate all the questions. I have one that's going to lead us over to our conversation with Dan, but I'll let you have the floor for a little bit.
So I had okay. So quick question I had about the whole case. This feels like this is a direct to consumer thing, right? You're not going into distribution. It's just you.
That's correct. At this point. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, just curious about that decision as well. I mean, I know we've talked to people who do both, and they have both, everybody has very different ideas. And I just thought, I mean, in some ways it frees you up to do whatever the hell you want, but it's also a pain. So just, thought I'd ask. Yeah.
Okay. So the question is why I went with direct to consumer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And not going through distribution. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe it's because I didn't really know how to get my game into distribution, because I knew I'm a nobody. And now I know that things have changed some with that. I understand, but I thought, well, I'm not quitting my day job and trying to create this mega product to try to sell millions right off the bat and taking heavy loads. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this as a hobby. I'm just going to start. I have to start a company. I believe, years ago, I guess Tom Vassell has said it more than once. If you're gonna publish your own game, you may as well. You are now a publisher. You are now a company. Go the whole 9 yards. You're not just gonna design your game and then everybody buy it. It doesn't work like that. You're starting a company, and that's very, very true. And along with that, for all the aspiring folks, comes you're playing less games now. The hobby that you once used to just use to relax after work and is now your part of your job, whether you want it to be or not. Even if it's a hobby, it's still a job now. And you have all this writing on your investments, time, money, everything you've done.
Sure.
And you don't just quit one day. Well, you can, but it's just, the train is moving. So you just have to, and now that time to play games, that time to, I play a lot fewer games than I used to. So it just is what it is. But honestly, that's okay. I feel like there's these stages of the gamer, and I did the buy every game and have 500 games, and then you sell off all your games, and then I go through those things. Now I think I have maybe 30 games over there on my shelf. That's so in just the best. I keep the best, but but yeah, so why direct to consumer then? I'm not answering the question.
It's all good.
The reason is maybe all of that to say, I wanted it to be simple. For me, simple is not easy. It's just clear and clean.
Sure.
Not trying to add too many variables in. I already don't know how to market. I already don't know how to run a Kickstarter. Not really.
Right.
I mean, I did that. Print and play is not the same thing. It's almost a completely different thing. I don't know how to manufacture a product. I don't know all of these things. Why am I going to now throw in yet more variables? Let me just keep it simple. I'm doing the Kickstarter. I've got backers. My bottom line is to get enough backers to fund the project, which will then pay for the manufacturing and all the landing costs, getting the product to the shores, to my warehouse, which is pretty much here. Or I also have a fulfillment company, GamesQuest in UK. For me, not to set up a partner in the UK to sell the Spirits of Christmas is kind of
Yeah, that's. And you said you weren't a marketer.
So I'm like, yeah, and kudos to them too. I always try to give the credit. GamesQuest reached out to me first.
Oh, nice.
And and so I appreciated that, because that helped for the new folks who don't always know who to talk to.
Right,
it's helpful. I don't like people proselytizing themselves to me any more than anybody does. But when I really needed it, that was helpful. So yeah, that was great. But anyway, so if I can just get the bottom line covered, manufacturing cost, if I can break even on the project, I feel successful. I got my game out there. People are playing it. I didn't have to go into debt to do it. In the end, I probably spent way more time than I, whatever, but I did it. At least, but at this point, I'm doing better than that. I was able to break even, but then now I have the extra copies I'm able to now sell right now, and learning how to market a little better and getting it out there. And so, they're not flying off the shelves, but I'm selling. It's a good thing, because I probably wouldn't keep up. I'm selling enough to keep me busy every day, boxing and shipping. That's just good. The USA, and then uploading all of the UK orders and Europe orders or those things to GamesQuest, tell them to fulfill those for me. I'm actually staying pretty busy. They are selling. And
it's the season.
People are discovering. It is. I didn't even bother marketing until October.
That makes sense. Right. Because you can get the Ghosts of Christmas. So you've got Halloween there, and then just all the way through. Yeah.
That's it. Exactly. That's exactly what we did. Yeah,
no, it's interesting, because I mentioned Dan. I'm referring to Dan Halligan. Dan Halligan's Kayenta Games. He has a game called Obsession, and it's an Empire-based game. And he's you and he have a lot of the same attributes in terms of, self-publishes, pretty much handles all the fulfillment, doesn't goes direct to retailer or through his own mechanism. So you guys have got a lot of similarities, and it was just kind of interesting to sort of see how you've kind of got there differently. You're also you're one of a number of educators that we've kind of come across in one form or another, including James, that are involved in this hobby, and I kind of wonder how all that kind of comes into all of this as well, just because it's like, I don't know if it just educators are gravitated to games, or they have more time, or I don't know.
Well, they don't have more time, but maybe that's it. Gravitate to games. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you have to like people if you're going to be an educator, right? It's hard not to think like I'm going to be surrounded by people like as my day job. You kind of want some of that. And it's nice to have a frame around that. I guess classes like that too, right? This is what we're going to do. It's how it's going to happen. And you never know what's going to happen exactly when you're in the classroom, but you got to, so that, I don't know, there's a parallel there.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. I had a question about so I haven't played the game. Joe was the one who found it and was like, hey, James, you got to see this. So this is cool. But it feels like you can tell the story of A Christmas Carol in a variety of different ways. Clearly, you can use Muppets. You can use, Bill Murray. You could, a lot of different ways to do this.
Yeah.
But how do you come up with a mechanism for, I'm going to take you through these 3 steps, and because there's got to be some at stakeness of what you're going to, try to succeed as a player, right? You clearly want to get Scrooge to give up and, stop being a miser. But so I'm fascinated how you got to the idea of let's do a game about this to here's how the mechanisms are going to play out.
Okay. Yep. Well, like I said, I started with the theme, and then I'm like, okay, so how do I play with A Christmas Carol? That's what I always ask. How do I play with this theme? And I'm like, well, first of all, it's a story. We have to tell the story. We have enough things where it's like, let's play, there's other games out there on it, but they're loose. I want to play the story of A Christmas Carol from start to finish. So how do we do that? And I'm like, well, there's a certain number of chapters, 5 chapters in the book, but most people only really think about the past, present, and future chapters. The first one introduces Marley and Scrooge himself, and then the end, it's all the yay, and it's the end of. It's called the end of it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm like, well,
go get the goose. Yeah.
That's it. So I'm like, well, let's use the first chapter. Originally, I had a first chapter where you're actually moving through the streets of London. I was like, nah. So scrap that. And I'm like, okay, first chapter is just, here's Marley's card. Pick, he's going to give you, he said, I offer you a gift, right? The gift is a chance to change, basically. So I'll offer you a gift. And then, so you get 3 gift cards. Yes, that was intentional. You get 3 gift cards at the beginning of the game that you can choose from, or pick randomly, and of course, in the different difficulty variants, you can take them all or none of them, whatever you want to do. It's very flexible in that way, but so that's that. And then the 5th chapter is, of course, scoring, essentially. So the game, the end of it. And so the actual game happens 2, 3, and 4, but in the game, it's really chapter 1, 2, and 3, just because it's too confusing to say, okay, we start in chapter 2. What? So yeah, but past, present, and future. And so how do we play through that? Well, he goes, it's quite simple. He goes through, and the first ghost comes out, shows him a series of scenes, and he has to reckon them somehow in his own mind about what's going on, what he remembers, and he has to do something with that. What does he do? He doesn't do anything. He just looks at it and comments about it and thinks about it. Well, okay. So, you're trying, what if you're the ghost? You're trying to help Scrooge see these scenes, and then you have to do it just simply through basic card play. You have 3 virtues. You have compassion, you have charity, and you have contentment. And he has to learn those 3 virtues. And as I looked through the story, I'm like, what are the virtues he's trying to learn? He's trying to learn, he should have been if he had been content, then he wouldn't have made the decisions to chase money, and he wouldn't have lost Isabel, which is the stupidest thing he did of the whole book, in my opinion. What were you thinking? And then, and if he had been content, he wouldn't have done that, because she was worth more money, more than any amount of money, but he wasn't content. And then in the 2nd chapter, now the Ghost of the Present comes out, showing him things. He's like, he needs to learn to be compassionate toward, he's shown Tiny Tim. He's like, oh, so remember that thing you said about, people, well, Tiny Tim, he's one of those people that you're wishing to go away. Well, have some compassion. And then in the 3rd chapter, he's learning, nobody's going to remember you, and all of your money's going to be given to the state. You need to learn to be charitable. So he has these 3 virtues he's trying to learn. And I'm like, those are the 3 types of cards that everybody plays. And then each one of those also has a number for movement. And so you're basically moving Scrooge along these scenes from his life, which act as spaces that he moves on to. And then you get him onto one of those scenes using movement. And then you play cards to show him the scene. And if you can do that, then you accomplish that. And there's only 3 that he has to do in order to win. The other scenes are supplementary and give him little bonuses and things like that, or give you as players bonuses. And you're just playing the story out. At the bottom of every single scene card is straight text, straight from that scene from the book. And that's for, flavor
public
text.
Domain.
It is. I contacted an IP lawyer before I did this. Like,
oh yeah.
And I can do this, right? He's like, oh yeah, as long as you stick with the book, don't borrow any little thing from a movie or you get in trouble.
Yep. And don't borrow anybody's annotations from a scholarly version. Stay away from that. Yep.
Nope. Straight from the book. So I had that book open all the time. Just word for word stuff. But yeah. So all the quotes are that. And that's also so that I thought, if families would have some young children around, that are wanting to participate, it's a great way to learn the story. And the rules are very flexible to where you can adapt things to it. There's a story mode where you can play the game in order. You have to go to the cards in order. It's very hard. But everybody, for those who want a challenge, but because here's the other challenge, it's a Christmas game. So when you're dealing at Christmas time, you have certain emotions, you have certain feelings, you have exhaustion from work, and you don't want to do anything stressful, right? There's all these emotions people have, and they're with their family, they're with their friends. They don't want to be cutthroat. So it's like, you know, and you can play those if you want, that's fine. But in a Christmas themed game, cutthroat isn't the name of the game. It's cooperation. So it has to be a cooperative game. So it's a cooperative game, but you can also play it solo, because I'm a big solo player. So
I was going to say, that's your history. Yep.
I have to do that. So, but I actually designed the regular gameplay before I designed the solo version. I have done solo first and before on other things, but not this one. This is meant to be cooperative, and I adapted a solo variant for it that worked quite nicely, but without changing the game too much.
Well, I think having the Dickens quotes, you know, if you tried to sell this in the UK, you know, having the Dickens quotes seems like a great,
it's doing well over there. I've got a good response from the UK, and I appreciate that. It would be sad if I didn't. I'd feel like I did something wrong. You know, you're messing with somebody else's story, right?
Right.
It's their story. So but yeah.
So I guess the one question that has nothing to do with any of this really, but I saw pictures of you with a lute, and so I have to ask if you've played luthier yet.
Do you know the earlier comment? Not playing enough games.
Yeah.
At this point,
but still, it's right there on target.
Oh my gosh, man! You have no idea how much I want to play that. You have no idea,
John.
I almost want to give literally an apology.
John is literally right behind me on a shelf, still in the shrink wrap, because I haven't had the chance to play it.
There you go. All right, gentlemen.
This is why I haven't bought it. Is because I'm afraid that's what will happen. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to play the game.
I backed the Kickstarter. I had to wait. It just showed up at my door.
Oh man, yes, I have a lute sitting right over here. I have a Renaissance lute. I play guitar. I mean, I studied classical guitar in college, and then I did blues, and I did my electric, and I do all that stuff, which I do more of these days anyway. But the lute is just fun to pull out as just a thing, and I enjoy it very much. But yeah, I have not played the game. When I first heard that game coming, I thought, I should.
Oh man.
Well, I had
that's too good, and I'm like, and I thought, how many people are gonna latch on?
Maybe it's going to suck. Maybe everybody's going to say it's terrible, and I don't want to. But no, it sounds really.
No, I never wish that. What I thought was, who's going to play that? Because not everybody. A lot of people, anybody who's a Euro gamer is going to want to play it, because that just screams Euro to me. It just, you know.
Oh yeah.
And then anybody who plays instruments, music. I mean, how many instruments does a luthier make? Lots of different kinds of instruments. So if you play any kind of instrument, if you play a violin, if you play a stringed instrument of any kind, you're gonna, I mean, a lot of people. And I thought, that's a great theme.
Well,
I'm very excited that it exists. I'm ashamed that I haven't played it, but I even have a few games I have on the shelf over here that I got a long time ago that still haven't gotten played out of my 30 game. That's how bad it is. I really hope I can get back to playing. I'm a hyper focused person, and I'm like, okay, I'll stop hyper focusing when I'm done with this job. Years go by. Okay, that's bad. So I'm like, I've got to play more games. I actually got, for the first time in a month, maybe, I played a game. I went over to my buddy's house. We got together. We played The Witcher. Because he had it, and he's been wanting to play it he got the Kickstarter and he hadn't played it yet, because he just hadn't been able to. We hadn't been able to. And we played it. It was fun. It was great, because, with my Song of the Seas pirate game I have, which is a kind of little bit, open world, kind of grow your character, so to speak, over time. I'm like, okay, I vibe with that. But yeah, luthier, man, it's on my list.
Well,
it's totally on my list. I will get to it. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a personal challenge.
I gotta say, I got it over here, challenge. And I own Distilled, same publisher, same designer, and like you, John, I play guitar. I'm a bass player, actually. That's my instrument of choice. Played this morning, in fact.
Great.
And so I'm thinking, okay, Bourbon, that's in my wheelhouse. Instruments, that's in my wheelhouse, and so very excited about it. And I've got to get it on the table soon, because James and I have another friend, another musician here in Charlotte that I need to get down to play with it as well, because I think it fits the same motif, because I've played distilled with them. I think we need to try luthier.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway,
really cool.
so I know we're coming up sort of at the top of the hour. I'm just curious, and I'm sure James will have a final question as well. But if there was somebody out there that was looking to publish their own game, or bootstrap it themselves, what advice would you give them?
How long do you have? Oh my gosh. My goodness. Okay.
All right, well, what's the one thing you wish somebody had told you before you did this? I'll simplify it for you. What's the one thing? The one thing, the most important one thing that's oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's overwhelming. That's too much. Okay, I'll just rattle off a few things as they first come to my mind. This is not in order of preference or importance. It's just the things that come to mind. Okay. Number one, marketing. Get help with marketing. And that doesn't mean pay $10,000 to a marketing company. There are some great resources out there for that. Let's see, just to keep it to the point, marketing. Another thing I needed a lot more help with would be how to play test. I'm still working on this one, how to get the right groups to play test your game. Those are tricky. Make sure that you play test, and not just yourself. Make sure you get it in front of people to play test it, blind play testing. I was able to reach out. What I did with Spirits of Christmas is I put it up. I had a BGG page, and then I had it up there, and people were discovering it just kind of organically. And, and I'm talking a small number of people, and I was seeing that it was being favorited, like want to own, people were putting that, on there.
Sure.
So you can kind of see who they are. And I thought, let me reach out to them and see if they want to play test it. So I reached out and I saw the short list of folks, and I said, okay, they're interested in the game. They want to own it. So I said, hey, I just sent them a message and said, would you be interested in play testing? I can send you, some prototype cards and stuff like that, and you can play test and be part of the group. And I did. I had a good little handful of people. And we made a Discord. We play tested. Wow, they were so helpful. They really,
that sounds really awesome.
Help knocked out. And I didn't have to pay a cent for that. For those of us who don't have big marketing budgets or don't have big, ways of getting the word out to people, don't want to annoy people with, especially our game group, with like, okay, we have to play my game again, So that was what I did, and it worked. They were great. They stuck with me the whole way. One of them became my editor because he's an English person, and paid him to do the editing, and so it's great. So yeah, very supportive folks. So anyway,
I like that idea of like building community just out of that interest on a BGG page. That's a really, I hadn't heard that before. That's fantastic.
It just happened to work this. hopefully that would again. Some other things. I'll tell you one thing, and this is kind of it's bittersweet. Because it's about volunteers and if you've ever had to work in your job or in a situation where you've had to work with volunteers, you understand how that can be. It is kind of bittersweet because you need them to do the things that you just don't have, whether you don't have the budget for it, you don't have the personnel to do it. You have to take on volunteers to do things. Problem is they don't have a commitment. They can
it's not their job. It's not their day job.
And they should. Yeah, they should have that freedom. So what you need to be careful of, and I learned this in my first Kickstarter, is when people come out excitedly, ready to offer to volunteer to do things to help the project, I welcome them with open arms. I say, yes, please, come on in. One thing I shouldn't have done is I think I set a few of them up to fail. Now, none of them are ever named or anything like that, unless they finished the thing. And of course I say, if they're okay with it, I say who helped out. But like, let's say somebody offers to translate the game into another language. and you're like, oh, that's so great that you want to do that for me. The problem was at that point, don't reveal the fact that that might be an option, because then that sets up your volunteer with a commitment they're not ready for.
Right.
Maybe they're like, oh, if you say that, I'm going to translate the game into this language, and then you tell everybody that you're going to have it in that language, that puts a lot of pressure on the person. And I made that mistake. And yeah, so you have to make sure. And later I had to eat it, because I had to pay for the service to be done, because I said it was going to be done, and that, the people who volunteered couldn't do it. So watch out for them, because you're going to get volunteers, especially if you have a nice looking project that people are excited about. You're going to get the volunteers. And this is, the biggest advice, I guess, that comes to my mind for a new person, just because I made the mistake, is, don't keep your volunteer. Of course, we know to keep your volunteers, identity private, unless they say otherwise, but also don't put that pressure on them that now you have to fulfill what you said you were going to do. After it's done, if you follow through, then I'll say, hey, everybody, by the way, so-and-so offered to translate it into this language, and look, there it is. That's what I should have done. So then I had to go back, made more work for myself. So yeah.
Well, and anytime you go from English to another language, you get about 10 to 15% more words, just because of the grammatical differences of languages. And then when you think about that in terms of your, rule book, or I'm sure it's probably more of a digital errata, is probably a really great way to do that. But yeah, I could see that and all the other tips. I think those are really good. I think, my sense is that those are probably the things that they gave you the most stress or the most pain through the process. And I think that was good. I know James every year does a couple of classes where, he's talking about games, and he does one for 3 weeks. And I think he's got a few students that have aspired to do this kind of thing. And, and it's hard to kind of, figure out where that right entry point is, and all the things that you got to have, in your work breakdown structure, in terms of how are you going to get from point A to point B, and what are the challenges that come along the way.
Q&As are great for this kind of thing. If somebody wants to know, just having somebody to ask. That's why Segmeyer has been so useful helpful, I should say, to people, is because of that.
That might be a really good
offering that information out.
That might really be a good segment for Mythicon and some of those. Maybe get yourself and somebody like a Dan, or so whoever's there that's published. There's a lot of, North Carolina, gosh, there are a lot of local publishers just here in the Charlotte metro area, and the same in Raleigh, Durham. You go up to Atomic Empire in Durham, and they're always featuring somebody local. And so I think, getting a couple of folks like that to sit on a panel and sort of talk about that. I know Professor Dungeon Master from Dungeon Craft did one this most recent Mythicon to talk about how to do a YouTube channel. But I think in terms of this kind of discussion, that might be an interesting thing to think about. We'll have to talk to Tuna about that maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah.
James, you have another question for John?
Nope, that was it. We hit the ones that I really wanted to hit, and some other ones that I made up along the way. So I'm feeling pretty good. And we are at the top of the hour, so mindful of everybody's time.
So well, folks, we've been talking to John Bailey, the publisher and founder of HumbleBard Games. His latest game is Spirits of Christmas. You can see about it on BGG, and he's got a website. It is thehumbleBard.com, and I will put a link to that in the show notes below. And as we roll into the latter part of season 4, we're going to be done with season 4 here in about less than a month, James. Can you believe that?
Yes, it's amazing.
I am Joe Mahaffey. I am not bored. I am board gaming.
And I'm James Engelhardt. I hope that all your tiebreakers break your way.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.